The sound of quiet sobbing echoed through the bathroom stall, muffled but unmistakable. Amber Johnson pressed her trembling hands against her face, trying desperately to silence the tears that wouldn't stop coming. The crisp white eviction notice crumpled in her lap felt like a death sentence, the bold red letters screaming final notice. 72 hours to vacate blurring through her tears. She had tried everything. Every single thing. Working double shifts at the coffee shop, selling her furniture piece by piece, skipping meals so Sophie could eat properly. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. The rent had climbed again, her tips had dwindled as the mall saw less foot traffic, and her car had needed repairs she couldn't afford to skip. Now, sitting in the employee bathroom during her 15-minute break, Amber felt the weight of failure crushing her chest. What would she tell Sophie? Her beautiful, innocent 7-year-old daughter who still believed her mother could fix anything. How do you tell your child that you're about to be homeless? That despite working yourself to exhaustion, you still couldn't keep a roof over her head? Amber's phone buzzed. Another text from her landlord. Another threat. She turned it off, unable to bear reading another word. The bathroom walls seemed to close in around her, the fluorescent lights too bright, too harsh, illuminating every failure she had tried to hide. She had no family to turn to. Her parents had passed away years ago, before Sophie was born. Her ex, Sophie's father, had disappeared the moment he learned she was pregnant, leaving nothing but broken promises and an empty bank account. Friends had their own struggles, their own families to feed. She was alone in this fight and she was losing. The worst part was the shame. The crushing, suffocating shame of not being enough. Of working so hard and still falling short. Of seeing other mothers pick up their children from school in clean clothes, driving reliable cars, not counting pennies at the grocery store. Amber had never wanted wealth or luxury. She just wanted stability. Safety. A chance for Sophie to have the childhood she deserved. But now, even that simple dream was crumbling. Her shoulders shook as another wave of despair hit her. She bit her lip hard to keep from making noise, tasting blood. The coffee shop was busy today and she couldn't afford to look weak. Couldn't afford to let anyone see her breaking apart. She had 15 minutes to pull herself together, wash her face, and go back to serving lattes with a smile plastered on her face. 15 minutes to become strong again. To be the mother Sophie needed her to be. But right now, in this moment, Amber let herself shatter. Just for a moment. Just until she could gather the pieces again. Outside the bathroom door, small footsteps approached. 7-year-old Sophie had been waiting at the table near the coffee shop, doing her homework like she did every day after school. But she had heard something. A sound that made her heart hurt. She knew that sound. It was the same sound she had heard late at night sometimes, when Mommy thought she was asleep. Mommy was crying. Sophie pressed her ear against the bathroom door, her pink backpack still on her shoulders. She heard it clearly now. Her mommy was sad. Really, really sad. And Sophie didn't know what to do. She looked around the busy mall corridor. People walked past, carrying shopping bags, talking on phones, living their lives. Nobody noticed one little girl standing outside a bathroom, worry etched across her young face. Then Sophie saw him. A tall man in a dark blue suit, walking with purpose toward the coffee shop. He looked important. Grown-ups who looked important could help with important problems, right? That's what Mommy always said. When you need help, find someone who looks like they know what to do. Sophie made a decision. She ran toward the man, her braids bouncing against her shoulders, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. She reached him just as he was about to enter the coffee shop, grabbing his sleeve with both small hands. "Excuse me, sir," Sophie said, her voice urgent. "My mommy's crying in the bathroom." Connor Morrison stopped mid-stride, looking down at the child who had grabbed his arm. He had been heading to the coffee shop for his usual afternoon espresso, his mind occupied with the board meeting he had just left. But the desperate look in this little girl's eyes cut through his thoughts like a knife. "What did you say?" Connor asked, kneeling down to her level. "My mommy's crying in the bathroom," Sophie repeated, her bottom lip trembling. "She's really sad. I don't know how to make her happy again. Can you help? Please? You look like someone who can help." Connor felt something shift in his chest. He looked at the little girl properly now, seeing the worn edges of her backpack, the slightly faded clothes that were clean but clearly bought secondhand, the worry in her eyes that no 7-year-old should have to carry. "Where is your mother?" Connor asked gently. Sophie pointed to the women's bathroom near the coffee shop. "In there. She's been in there for a long time. I heard her crying. I don't know what to do." Connor stood, his business instincts kicking in. Something was seriously wrong. A mother crying in a public bathroom while her daughter waited outside, worried enough to approach a stranger for help. This wasn't a simple bad day. This was a crisis. "What's your name?" Connor asked. "Sophie. Sophie Johnson. And my mommy is Amber Johnson. She works at that coffee shop." Sophie pointed to the small cafe next to them. "She works really hard. All the time. But she still cries sometimes." Connor's jaw tightened. He recognized that story. He had seen it too many times in his 40 years of life. Hardworking people who gave everything and still couldn't get ahead. The system wasn't designed for people like Amber Johnson. It was designed for people like him, people who already had resources and connections. But Connor Morrison hadn't built a billion-dollar tech company by ignoring problems. He had built it by solving them. "Sophie, I'm Connor," he said, extending his hand. She shook it solemnly. "Will you wait here for just a moment? I'm going to see if I can help your mother." "You promise you'll help?" Sophie asked, her eyes searching his face. Connor looked at this brave little girl who had approached a stranger because she loved her mother enough to overcome her fear. "I promise," he said. And he meant it. Have you ever felt so desperate that a child's tears became your breaking point? Have you ever watched someone you love suffer and felt powerless to stop it? If this story touches your heart, subscribe to hear how Connor's promise changes everything. Drop a comment below telling me what you would do in Sophie's situation. Connor walked toward the bathroom, stopping a female employee from the nearby bookstore. "Excuse me, could you check on someone in the women's bathroom? I believe there's a woman in distress. Tell her someone wants to help." The employee nodded and entered. A moment later, she emerged with a confused expression. "She says she's fine. Just needs a minute." "Tell her Sophie sent me," Connor said firmly. The employee went back inside. This time, Connor heard movement. A minute later, the door opened and Amber Johnson stepped out. Connor's breath caught. Even with red-rimmed eyes and tear-stained cheeks, she was beautiful. Her dark skin glowed even under the harsh mall lighting, her natural hair pulled back into a simple ponytail. She wore a green coffee shop uniform that had seen better days, but she carried herself with a dignity that broke Connor's heart. Because he could see it. The exhaustion. The fear. The desperate attempt to hold herself together. "Sophie?" Amber said immediately, looking around in panic. "She's right here, Mom." Sophie called, waving from where Connor had asked her to wait. Amber rushed to her daughter, kneeling down and checking her over. "Baby, what did you do? Who did you talk to?" "I got help," Sophie said proudly. "You were crying and I found someone to help. That's Mr. Connor. He promised to help." Amber looked up at Connor, her eyes widening. She recognized him now. Connor Morrison. The billionaire CEO whose face had been on the business section of the newspaper just last week. His company, Morrison Tech, was one of the largest employers in the city. "I'm so sorry," Amber stammered, standing up. "My daughter shouldn't have bothered you. We're fine. Everything is fine." "Mom, you were crying," Sophie said, her voice small. Amber's composure cracked. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. "Baby, sometimes adults cry. It doesn't mean anything is wrong." But Connor saw the lie. He saw the way her hands trembled. The way she couldn't quite meet his eyes. The way her uniform hung a little looser than it should, suggesting skipped meals. "Mrs. Johnson," Connor said softly. Sophie was very brave to ask for help. "Would you let me buy you and your daughter a coffee? Or perhaps something to eat? Just a few minutes of your time." Amber shook her head. "Thank you, but I have to get back to work. My break is almost over." "I'll speak to your manager," Connor said. "I'm sure they can give you a few more minutes." "No, please don't," Amber said quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. "I can't afford to cause any problems. I need this job." Connor understood. She was living on the edge where any small disruption could be catastrophic. "Then let me wait until your shift ends," he said. "Please. Your daughter came to me for help. Let me at least try to help." Amber looked at Sophie, who was staring up at her with hopeful eyes. She looked at Connor, this stranger who was offering help without even knowing what was wrong. Every instinct told her to say no, to protect herself and Sophie from disappointment, from false hope. But she was so tired. So very, very tired. "My shift ends in 2 hours," Amber heard herself say. "But really you don't need to wait. We'll be okay." "I'll wait," Connor said simply. 2 hours is nothing. Sophie and I can get to know each other. If that's all right with you." Amber looked at her daughter again. Sophie nodded eagerly. And Amber, who had been holding the weight of the world alone for so long, felt something crack inside her. Maybe, just maybe, it was okay to accept help. Maybe it was okay to let someone else carry the burden for just a moment. Okay, Amber whispered. Okay. Connor smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something warm and genuine. Good. Now go finish your shift. Sophie and I will be right here waiting. As Amber walked back to the coffee shop, she glanced back once. Connor had sat down at the table with Sophie, and they were already talking. Sophie's homework spread between them. For the first time in weeks, Amber felt something other than despair. She felt hope. Connor Morrison had never expected to spend his Tuesday afternoon helping a 7-year-old with her math homework in a mall food court. His schedule had called for meetings, conference calls, and reviewing quarterly reports. Instead, he found himself explaining multiplication to Sophie while keeping one eye on the coffee shop where her mother worked. So if I have 3 groups of 4 cookies, that's 12 cookies? Sophie asked, her pencil hovering over the worksheet. Exactly right, Connor confirmed, watching Amber through the shop window as she served customers with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sophie followed his gaze. She's really good at her job. All the customers like her. She remembers what everyone orders. I bet she is good at it, Connor said. Your mother seems like someone who works very hard. She does, Sophie said matter-of-factly. She works all the time. Sometimes 2 jobs. And she's always tired, but she still helps me with homework and reads me stories. The little girl's expression grew serious. But I heard her on the phone yesterday. Someone was saying mean things about money. Mommy said we needed more time, but the person wouldn't listen. Connor's hands tightened on the table. He had suspected financial trouble, but hearing it confirmed through a child's innocent observations made it real. Made it urgent. Sophie, do you and your mom have other family? Grandparents? Aunts or uncles? Sophie shook her head. Nope. Mommy says it's just us against the world. She says we're a team. Her eyes welled up. But I think we're losing, Mr. Connor. I don't know what game we're playing, but Mommy keeps looking more and more sad. Connor felt a pain in his chest he hadn't experienced in years. Not since his own parents had died in a car accident when he was 22, leaving him alone to run the small tech startup they had helped him found. He remembered that feeling of facing the world alone, of being terrified and trying to hide it. He wouldn't let Sophie and Amber face that same terror. Not if he could help it. Sophie, do you trust me? Connor asked. The little girl studied him carefully, her eyes wise beyond her years. I think so. You have a nice face. Not like the mean people who call Mommy on the phone. Connor smiled sadly. I promise I'm going to help your mother. But I need you to be brave and patient. Can you do that? I'm good at being brave, Sophie said. And Mommy says I'm getting better at being patient. Good girl, Connor said, ruffling her braids gently. Now, let's finish this homework so your mother sees how smart you are. 2 hours passed. Connor made several calls on his phone, speaking in low tones that Sophie couldn't hear. He canceled his evening plans, rescheduled tomorrow's meetings, and set certain wheels in motion. When Amber's shift finally ended, she emerged from the coffee shop looking even more exhausted than before. Ready to go? She asked Sophie, forcing brightness into her voice. Mom, Mr. Connor helped me with all my homework, Sophie said excitedly. And he bought me a muffin. I saved half for you. Amber's eyes grew moist again. Baby, you should have eaten all of it. But you didn't eat lunch again, Sophie said. You never eat lunch anymore. Connor saw Amber's face freeze, the shame and embarrassment flooding her features. She opened her mouth to protest, to make an excuse, but he spoke first. Mrs. Johnson, I wonder if we could talk. Privately. Just for a few minutes. Amber hesitated, then nodded. Sophie, stay right here where I can see you, okay? Keep doing your reading homework. Okay, Mom, Sophie said, pulling out a book. Connor led Amber to a bench a few feet away, still within sight of Sophie but out of earshot. For a long moment, neither spoke. Amber stared at her hands and Connor tried to find the right words. I know we're strangers, Connor finally said. And I know you have no reason to trust me. But Sophie came to me for help and I'd like to offer it. If you'll let me. You don't know anything about our situation, Amber said quietly. Sophie shouldn't have bothered you. I'm handling things. Are you? Connor asked gently. Because Sophie says you've been crying a lot. She says people call you about money. And she says you don't eat lunch anymore. Amber's face crumpled. She's 7. She shouldn't have to notice those things. But she does notice, Connor said. Because she loves you. And she's scared. Amber covered her face with her hands. I received an eviction notice today. I have 72 hours to come up with 3 months of back rent or we're out on the street. I've tried everything. Loans, payment plans, extra shifts. Nothing worked. I don't know what to do. The words came tumbling out, a confession of failure she had been holding inside. I'm going to lose our apartment. Sophie will have to leave her school. We might have to go to a shelter. I failed her. I failed my daughter. No, Connor said firmly. You haven't failed anyone. The system has failed you. Working 2 jobs should be enough to house and feed a family. The fact that it isn't says nothing about you and everything about what's broken in this world. Amber looked up at him, surprise in her eyes. You don't even know me. I know enough, Connor said. I know you're working yourself to exhaustion for your daughter. I know you're facing eviction despite doing everything right. I know you're a good mother who's been dealt a terrible hand. He paused. And I know I can help if you'll let me. I can't ask you for money, Amber said, shaking her head. I won't be a charity case. It's not charity, Connor said. It's an investment. In fact, I have a proposal. Hear me out before you say no. Amber waited, her body tense. I'll pay your back rent, Connor said. All of it. And I'll pay the next 6 months in advance to give you breathing room. I can't accept that, Amber said immediately. Wait, Connor held up a hand. In exchange, I'd like to offer you a job at Morrison Tech. A real job with benefits, actual hours, and a salary that can support you and Sophie. I need someone to coordinate my office administration. Someone organized, hardworking, and good with people. Sophie tells me you remember every customer's order. That's exactly the kind of detail-oriented person I need. Amber stared at him. Why would you do this? You don't know if I'm even qualified. Because Sophie asked me to help, Connor said simply. And because I believe in helping people who are trying to help themselves. You're not asking for a handout. You're working yourself to death trying to make ends meet. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. This doesn't make sense, Amber said, her voice breaking. People don't just do this. There has to be a catch. Connor met her eyes steadily. No catch. Just an offer. Take the job, let me help with your rent, and give yourself a chance to breathe. You can pay me back if it makes you feel better, but honestly, consider it a signing bonus. A signing bonus of several $1,000s? Amber said incredulously. I waste more than that on business dinners I don't want to attend, Connor said. This money would actually mean something. It would help someone who deserves help. Amber's mind raced. Every instinct screamed that this was too good to be true. People didn't offer strangers jobs and thousands of dollars. But as she looked at Connor's face, she saw only sincerity. No hidden agenda. No creepy ulterior motive. Just genuine concern. And she was out of options. She had no other choice. In 72 hours, she and Sophie would be homeless. If I accept, Amber said slowly, I work for this job. Really work. I'm not decoration. I'm not a charity project you show off at parties. I do real work and earn my pay. I wouldn't have it any other way, Connor said. I need someone competent, not someone decorative. And from what Sophie tells me about how you manage 2 jobs, school schedules, homework, and everything else, you're more than qualified. Amber took a deep breath. Okay, I'll accept. The job and the help with rent. But I'm paying you back the rent money. Every penny. Even if it takes years. If that's what you need to accept help, then fine, Connor said, smiling. But I'm not worried about it. When would I start? Amber asked. Monday. That gives you a few days to give notice at the coffee shop and get Sophie sorted with school. I'll have my assistant send over the employment paperwork and arrange payment to your landlord immediately. What's your address? Amber rattled off the address, feeling like she was in a dream. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Consider it done, Connor said. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text. My assistant will handle it tonight. You'll have confirmation of payment within the hour. Tears streamed down Amber's face. I don't know how to thank you. Thank me by showing up Monday ready to work, Connor said. And by letting yourself believe that good things can happen. That people can help each other without expecting something in return. Amber nodded, unable to speak through her tears. These weren't tears of despair anymore. They were tears of relief, of hope, of overwhelming gratitude that someone had actually heard her when she cried out. Connor stood, offering his hand to help her up. Come on. Let's go tell Sophie that things are going to be okay. They walked back to where Sophie waited, the little girl's eyes widening as she saw her mother's tears. Mommy, what's wrong? Sophie asked, alarmed. Nothing's wrong, baby, Amber said, kneeling down and hugging her daughter tightly. Everything's right. Mr. Connor helped us. He really helped us. I told you he would, Sophie said matter-of-factly. He has a helping face. Connor laughed, and it was a genuine sound that surprised even him. A helping face? I've never heard that before. It's true, Sophie insisted. Some people have mean faces. You have a helping face. Well, I'm glad I could live up to my face, Connor said. He handed Amber a business card. My personal cell number is on there. Call or text if you need anything before Monday. And I mean anything. Questions about the job, issues with the landlord, whatever you need. Amber took the card like it was made of gold. Thank you. I still can't believe this is real. It's real, Connor assured her. Now go home, rest, and don't worry. Everything is handled. As Amber and Sophie walked away, Sophie turned back and waved. Bye, Mr. Connor. Thank you for helping my mommy. Connor waved back, feeling something warm settle in his chest. For years he had been focused on building his company, making money, expanding his empire. But he couldn't remember the last time something had felt this meaningful. Helping Sophie and Amber felt right in a way nothing had felt right in a long time. As he walked to his car, Connor's phone buzzed with a confirmation. His assistant had already processed the payment to Amber's landlord and sent over the employment paperwork. Everything was in motion. Connor Morrison had built an empire by solving problems. Today he had solved a problem that actually mattered. And somehow he suspected that this was just the beginning. Monday morning arrived with sunshine streaming through Amber's apartment window, a brightness that felt symbolic of the change in her life. For the first time in months, she had slept through the night without waking up in a panic about bills. The eviction notice was gone, replaced by a paid-in-full receipt that still didn't feel real. Amber stood in front of her closet, staring at the limited options. Starting a new job at a tech company required professional attire, and her wardrobe consisted mostly of her coffee shop uniforms and casual clothes worn thin from repeated washing. She finally settled on a maroon blouse she had bought years ago for a job interview and black slacks that were slightly faded but clean and pressed. Would have to do. Mommy, you look pretty, Sophie said from the doorway, already dressed in her school uniform. Thank you, baby, Amber said, smoothing down the blouse. Are you excited about your new school? Connor had arranged for Sophie to transfer to Riverside Elementary, a top-rated public school near Morrison Tech headquarters. It had after-school programs, art classes, and a library that Sophie had gasped over when they visited on Friday. The transfer had been processed in record time, another miracle in a week full of them. I'm a little nervous, Sophie admitted. What if the other kids don't like me? Amber knelt down, taking her daughter's hands. They're going to love you. You're smart, kind, and brave. Remember how brave you were when you asked Mr. Connor for help? That same bravery will help you make new friends. Sophie nodded, squaring her small shoulders. Okay. I can do this. We both can, Amber said, pulling her daughter into a hug. An hour later, after dropping Sophie at her new school and watching her walk into the building with determined steps, Amber drove to Morrison Tech. The building was a sleek glass structure in the business district, modern and impressive. She parked in the visitor's lot, her hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. This was real. This was actually happening. Inside, the lobby was all polished marble and minimalist design. A friendly receptionist directed her to the elevators and the 15th floor. When the doors opened, a young woman in a bright red suit was waiting. Amber Johnson? The woman asked with a warm smile. Yes, that's me, Amber confirmed. I'm Rachel Torres, Mr. Morrison's executive assistant. Welcome to Morrison Tech. Connor asked me to help you get settled today. Amber followed Rachel through the floor, taking in the open office layout, the employees working at modern desks, the casual but professional atmosphere. It was nothing like the coffee shop. Nothing like anywhere she had ever worked. This is your office, Rachel said, opening a door to a small but beautiful space with a window overlooking the city. You'll be coordinating administrative support for the executive team, managing schedules, organizing meetings, handling correspondence, that sort of thing. Connor will go over the details, but don't worry. We'll train you on everything. I have my own office? Amber asked, stunned. Of course, Rachel said. You're a coordinator, not an intern. Now let's get you set up with your computer access and security badge. The next hour was a whirlwind of paperwork, system logins, and introductions. Everyone Amber met was friendly and welcoming, treating her like a valued team member rather than a charity case. It helped ease the anxiety that had been building in her chest. Finally, Rachel led her to Connor's office at the end of the hall. The space was larger but not ostentatious, with floor-to-ceiling windows and simple, elegant furniture. Connor stood as they entered, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than Amber's monthly rent. "Amber, welcome," Connor said with a genuine smile. "How's everything going so far?" "It's wonderful," Amber said honestly. "Everyone has been so kind." "Good," Connor said. "Rachel, thank you. Could you give us a few minutes?" Once Rachel left, Connor gestured to the chairs in front of his desk. "Please sit. I wanted to check in personally on your first day. How's Sophie doing with her new school?" "She was nervous but excited," Amber said. "I still can't believe how quickly you arranged everything." "Money and connections make things move faster," Connor said matter-of-factly. "But that's not important. What's important is that you and Sophie are settled and safe now. No more eviction notices. No more skipping meals." Amber felt her throat tighten. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "By being excellent at your job," Connor said. "I didn't hire you out of pity, Amber. I hired you because I genuinely need someone with your skills. Rachel is overwhelmed, and the executive team needs better coordination. You'll be earning your salary, I promise." "I want to work hard," Amber said firmly. "I want to prove I deserve this opportunity." "You already deserve it," Connor said gently. "But I appreciate your dedication. Now, let me walk you through what this position entails." For the next hour, Connor explained her responsibilities. She would manage calendars for the executive team, coordinate meetings and travel, handle correspondence, organize company events, and serve as a liaison between departments. It was a lot, but as Connor described each task, Amber felt her confidence growing. She had been juggling multiple jobs, schedules, and responsibilities for years. This was just applying those skills in a new environment. "Questions?" Connor asked when he finished. "Just one," Amber said. "Why are you really doing this? And please don't say it's just because Sophie asked. There has to be more to it." Connor leaned back in his chair, considering his words carefully. "You're right. Sophie's request was the catalyst, but there are deeper reasons." He paused. "I lost my parents when I was 22. They helped me start this company and then they were gone. I was alone, scared, and facing a mountain of debt from their medical bills. A stranger helped me. A business mentor who had no reason to care about some grieving kid with a failing startup. He gave me a loan, advice, and most importantly, belief that I could succeed." Connor's eyes met Amber's. "I never got to repay him. He died 5 years later. But I promised myself that if I ever had the means, I would pay that kindness forward. When Sophie came to me, so brave and desperate to help her mother, I saw an opportunity to keep that promise. So yes, I'm helping you. But I'm also honoring someone who helped me when I had nothing." Amber felt tears prick her eyes. "Your mentor would be proud of what you've built. And proud that you're using it to help others." "I hope so," Connor said quietly. "Now enough heavy talk. Let's get you started on actual work. Rachel will show you the ropes, and you can shadow her this week to learn our systems." The rest of the day flew by. Amber absorbed information like a sponge, taking notes, asking questions, and slowly feeling more comfortable in her role. By the time 5 o'clock arrived, she was exhausted but energized. She picked up Sophie from the after-school program, finding her daughter animated and happy. "Mommy, I made 3 friends," Sophie announced. "Their names are Brianna, Megan, and Tyler. And the teacher is really nice. And we get to check out books from the library every week." Amber hugged her daughter tight, feeling overwhelmed by gratitude. 1 week ago, she had been crying in a bathroom, convinced she had failed. Now she had a good job, Sophie was in a great school, and their home was secure. That evening, after dinner and homework, Amber's phone buzzed with a text from Connor. "How was your first day? I hope Rachel didn't overwhelm you too much." Amber smiled, typing back. "It was wonderful. Thank you again for everything." "You're welcome. By the way, HR will send over information about your benefits package. We have excellent health insurance, and there's a daycare discount program if you need after-school care stipends. Make sure you take advantage of everything available." Amber stared at the message. Health insurance. She and Sophie had been uninsured for over a year, relying on free clinics and prayers that nothing serious happened. The idea of having actual healthcare made her want to cry again. "I will. Thank you, Connor. Sleep well, Amber. See you tomorrow." As Amber tucked Sophie into bed that night, her daughter looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Mommy, are we going to be okay now?" Amber smoothed Sophie's braids, her heart full. "Yes, baby. We're going to be okay. Better than okay. We're going to be good." "I like Mr. Connor," Sophie said, yawning. "He keeps his promises." "He does," Amber agreed. "Now sleep. You have school tomorrow and I have work." As Sophie drifted off, Amber stood in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time in months. The tension that had been a constant companion was finally easing. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were beginning to live again. And it was all because a little girl had been brave enough to ask for help, and a billionaire had been kind enough to give it. Amber sent up a silent prayer of thanks, not to any specific deity but to the universe itself for finally showing mercy. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a very long time, she was actually excited to find out. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, and new opportunities. But tonight, Amber let herself simply feel grateful. They had been given a second chance. And she was determined to make the most of it. 3 weeks into her new job, Amber had found her rhythm at Morrison Tech. The work was challenging but fulfilling, and she discovered she had a talent for organization and problem-solving that translated perfectly into her role. Rachel had become not just a colleague but a friend, often inviting Amber to lunch and making sure she felt included in office culture. But it was her interactions with Connor that surprised her most. Despite being the CEO, he wasn't distant or unapproachable. He stopped by her office regularly to check on her progress, always asking about Sophie before discussing work matters. These visits felt less like boss checking on employee and more like genuine conversations between two people getting to know each other. "How's Sophie adjusting to Riverside?" Connor asked one Thursday afternoon, leaning against Amber's doorway with his suit jacket slung over his shoulder and his sleeves rolled up. It was a more casual look than she usually saw him in, and Amber noticed other female employees stealing glances as they passed. "She loves it," Amber said, looking up from the meeting agenda she was preparing. "She joined the art club and she's already reading above her grade level. The library program you mentioned has been incredible for her." "That's wonderful," Connor said, genuinely pleased. "My parents always emphasized education. They said it was the one thing no one could ever take from you." "They sound like they were smart people," Amber said. "They were," Connor agreed, a shadow crossing his face. "I wish they could have seen what the company became. They poured everything into helping me start it." Amber saw the grief in his eyes, recognizing it because she carried her own. "They saw enough. They saw you building something meaningful. That's more than most parents get to see." Connor looked at her with surprise and something else Amber couldn't quite name. "That's a kind way to think about it. Thank you." An awkward silence fell, broken when Rachel appeared with a stack of files. "Sorry to interrupt," Rachel said, though her knowing smile suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "Amber, these need approval signatures before tomorrow's board meeting. Connor, your 3 o'clock is waiting in the conference room." "Right, thanks," Connor said, straightening. He looked at Amber once more. "Would you have time tomorrow to go over the quarterly review agenda? I value a fresh perspective, and you've been observing how we run these meetings." "Of course," Amber said, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach. "What time works for you?" "Early. 7:30? I know it's before official hours, but I'll buy breakfast. There's a great cafe on the ground floor." 7:30 works, Amber agreed. After Connor left, Rachel perched on the edge of Amber's desk, her expression amused. "He likes you." "He's my boss," Amber said quickly. "He's just being kind." "Connor Morrison doesn't invite employees to pre-work breakfast meetings to discuss agendas," Rachel said. "And he definitely doesn't ask about their kids with that soft expression on his face." Amber felt her cheeks warm. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" Rachel challenged. "Look, I've worked for Connor for 3 years. He's professional, fair, and generous with his employees. But he keeps distance. Except with you. With you he's different. Warmer. More engaged." "That's because Sophie approached him," Amber explained. "He feels responsible for us." "Maybe at first," Rachel conceded. "But it's been 3 weeks. He's still checking on you daily, asking about Sophie, finding excuses to stop by your office. That's not just responsibility, Amber. That's interest. Even if that were true, which I'm not saying it is, it would be inappropriate," Amber said firmly. "He's my boss. I need this job. I can't risk everything for some office romance that probably wouldn't work out anyway." Rachel's expression softened. "I understand your caution. Really I do. But Connor isn't the type to abuse his position. If he does have feelings for you, he'll handle it respectfully. And for what it's worth, I think you'd be good for him. He's been alone for too long, buried in work. You and Sophie have made him smile more in 3 weeks than I've seen in 3 years. Can we please not talk about this?" Amber pleaded. "I'm finally stable. Sophie is finally happy. I don't want to complicate things." "Fair enough," Rachel said, hopping off the desk. But just think about it. Life isn't just about stability and safety. Sometimes it's about taking chances on good things. That evening, Amber couldn't stop thinking about Rachel's words. She picked up Sophie from after-school care, listening to her daughter chatter about art class and a science project on butterflies. They stopped at the grocery store, where Amber no longer had to count every penny or put items back at the register. They bought fresh vegetables, good meat, and even a treat for dessert. These small normalcies still felt miraculous. At home, while Sophie worked on homework, Amber found her thoughts drifting to Connor. She couldn't deny that she looked forward to his office visits. Couldn't deny that her heart beat a little faster when she saw his name on her calendar. Couldn't deny that he was not just attractive but genuinely kind in a way she had rarely encountered. But Rachel was wrong about one thing. It wasn't just about stability and safety. It was about protecting Sophie. Her daughter had already lost one father who couldn't be bothered to stay. Amber wouldn't risk letting Sophie get attached to someone who might eventually leave too. Even if that someone was Connor Morrison. The next morning, Amber arrived at 7:20, wearing a royal blue dress that was new, bought with her first paycheck as a small gift to herself. Connor was already at a table in the corner of the ground floor cafe, 2 coffee cups and a bag of pastries waiting. "Good morning," Connor said, standing as she approached. "I got you a latte. Sophie mentioned once that you like them with almond milk. I hope I remembered correctly." "You did," Amber said, touched that he had remembered such a small detail. "Thank you." They settled into discussing the quarterly review agenda, but the conversation naturally expanded beyond work. Connor asked about her education, learning she had been 2 semesters away from a business degree when her parents died and she had to drop out. He asked about her goals, her interests, the dreams she'd put on hold. "Have you thought about finishing your degree?" Connor asked. "We have an education assistance program. The company pays for employees to take classes." "I barely have time to breathe," Amber laughed. "Adding classes seems impossible." "Online courses," Connor suggested. "Flexible schedule. You could finish in a year or 2 working at your own pace. And having that degree would open even more opportunities, here or anywhere else you wanted to go." "You're serious?" Amber asked. "Completely. I'll have HR send over the information. No pressure, but the option is there if you want it." Amber felt that familiar sting of grateful tears. "Why do you keep doing things like this?" "Like what?" Connor asked, genuinely confused. "Helping me. Going out of your way to make my life better. First the job, then Sophie's school, now this. Most bosses don't care about their employees this much." Connor set down his coffee, meeting her eyes directly. "You're not just an employee, Amber. You and Sophie have become important to me. I enjoy knowing you're both doing well. I enjoy our conversations. And I like seeing you happy instead of scared and exhausted." Amber's breath caught. There was something in his eyes, something that made Rachel's words echo in her mind. "He does like you." "Connor," Amber started, then stopped, unsure what to say. "I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable," Connor said quickly. "If I have, I apologize. I just want you to know that I care about your well-being. Both of you. As people, not just as a good deed I did once." "You don't make me uncomfortable," Amber admitted. "You make me feel valued." "See, it's been a long time since anyone made me feel that way." Connor smiled and it transformed his face. "Good. Because that's exactly how you should feel." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary before Amber looked away, her heart racing. This was dangerous territory. But it was also exciting in a way she hadn't felt since before Sophie was born. "We should probably get upstairs," Amber said, checking her watch. "The office will be opening soon." "Right," Connor agreed, though he seemed reluctant to end the moment. As they rode the elevator together, Amber caught their reflection in the polished doors. They looked good together, she realized. Professional and put together, but also comfortable in each other's presence. When the doors opened on the 15th floor, Sophie was sitting in reception with Rachel, her small backpack beside her. "Sophie?" Amber said in surprise. "What are you doing here? Is everything okay?" "Mom, you forgot it's teacher planning day," Sophie said. "No school today, remember? Miss Rachel said I could stay with you at work." Amber's hand flew to her mouth. She had completely forgotten. In her old life, missing a scheduled detail like this would have been catastrophic. But now, with her new resources, it was manageable. "I'm so sorry, baby," Amber said, hugging Sophie. "Let me figure out where you can stay for the day." "She can hang out in my office," Connor offered immediately. "I have a couch, plenty of books on the shelf, and I'm sure we can find her something interesting to do." If that's okay with you, Amber? I don't want to impose, Amber said. It's not imposing, Connor insisted. I'd enjoy the company. Besides, Sophie and I are friends now, right, Sophie? Right, Sophie agreed happily. Can I, Mom? Please? Amber looked between her daughter's hopeful face and Connor's sincere expression. If you're sure it's not too much trouble. None at all, Connor assured her. And so Sophie spent the day in Connor's office, sitting on his couch with her books and drawing supplies. Amber checked on them several times, each visit revealing a different scene. Once, they were having an intense discussion about what kind of dinosaur would win in a fight. Another time, Connor was helping Sophie with a math problem. By afternoon, they were building something out of paper clips and sticky notes, both laughing at their creation. Watching them together made Amber's chest ache with emotions she wasn't ready to name. Connor was so natural with Sophie, patient and playful in equal measure. And Sophie was completely at ease with him, the wariness she usually showed around new adults completely absent. At 5 o'clock, Amber collected her daughter. Thank you again for watching her, Amber said. I promise I won't forget the schedule again. Anytime, Connor said, and Amber could tell he meant it. Sophie is delightful company. We had a great day, didn't we, Sophie? The best, Sophie confirmed. Mr. Connor is funny. And he taught me about investments and compound interest. Amber laughed. Of course he did. As they headed toward the elevator, Sophie took Amber's hand and said in a stage whisper that Connor could definitely hear, Mom, I really like Mr. Connor. He's nice. And he makes you smile. Amber's cheeks burned as she hurried Sophie into the elevator, but not before she caught Connor's expression. He was smiling too, a soft, genuine smile that made her heart flutter dangerously. Rachel had been right. Something was building between them. Something that felt inevitable and terrifying and wonderful all at once. And for the first time in years, Amber found herself thinking that maybe, just maybe, it was okay to want something more than just survival. Maybe it was okay to hope for happiness too. The company picnic arrived on a perfect Saturday in late spring. Morrison Tech had rented out a lakeside park, complete with catered food, games for kids, and a relaxed atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the usual office environment. Amber had been hesitant to attend, viewing it as an obligation rather than enjoyment, but Sophie's excitement had won out. Can we go on the paddle boats, Mom? Sophie asked as they walked from the parking lot, her yellow sundress bright against the green grass. We'll see, baby, Amber said, adjusting her own outfit self-consciously. She wore a simple green sundress and sandals, appropriate but not fancy. Around them, other families milled about in casual weekend clothes, and Amber reminded herself that she belonged here. She was part of this company now. Amber. Sophie. Connor's voice called from near the food pavilion. He waved them over, looking different than she had ever seen him. No suit today. Instead, he wore jeans and a red polo shirt, his hair slightly mussed and his smile relaxed. He looked younger, more approachable, and undeniably attractive. Glad you made it, Connor said as they approached. Sophie, there's a whole section of games for kids over by those trees. Face painting, obstacle course, the works. Sophie's eyes lit up. Can I go, Mom? Of course, Amber said. Stay where I can see you, okay? Sophie took off running, and Amber watched her go with a mixture of love and protective anxiety. She'll be fine, Connor said gently. The company hired professional staff to supervise the kids' activities. She's safe. I know, Amber sighed. It's just habit. Years of being hypervigilant don't disappear overnight. But they can fade over time, Connor said. When you feel secure enough to let your guard down. He gestured toward the lake. Walk with me. Before the crowds get too thick. They strolled along the water's edge, maintaining a respectful distance but somehow feeling closer than the space suggested. Other employees called out greetings to Connor, who responded warmly but didn't stop walking. It was clear he wanted this time with Amber. How are you really doing? Connor asked. Not the professional answer. The real one. Amber considered the question. I'm still adjusting. Some mornings I wake up and expect it all to be a dream. That I'll be back in that tiny apartment, worried about eviction, working at the coffee shop. But it's not a dream, Connor said. No, Amber agreed. It's real. And I'm grateful every single day. But sometimes the gratitude is overwhelming. Like I don't deserve this much good fortune. Connor stopped walking, turning to face her. Amber, you deserve every bit of goodness that comes your way. You've worked hard, sacrificed, and put Sophie's needs above your own for years. The universe doesn't owe you suffering. It owes you joy. That's a beautiful thought, Amber said softly. I wish I could believe it as easily as you say it. Then let me believe it for both of us until you can believe it yourself, Connor said. They resumed walking and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Connor shared stories from Morrison Tech's early days, when he was working 20-hour days in a cramped office, living on ramen noodles and determination. Amber countered with tales of juggling 2 jobs while pregnant, including the time she went into labor during a shift and still tried to finish making a customer's sandwich. They laughed together, finding humor in past hardships now that they were safely in the past. The connection between them deepened with each shared story, each moment of understanding. You know what I admire most about you? Connor said as they circled back toward the pavilion. What? Amber asked. Your strength. Not the survive-at-all-costs kind, though you have that too. But the strength to stay soft. To remain kind and hopeful despite everything you've been through. Many people would have become bitter. You became stronger. Amber felt her eyes mist. I had Sophie. I couldn't let her grow up thinking the world was cruel. I had to show her it could be good too, even when I didn't quite believe it myself. And now? Connor asked. Do you believe it now? Amber met his eyes, seeing something there that made her heart race. I'm starting to. Good, Connor said quietly. They rejoined the picnic, but something had shifted between them. They stayed near each other throughout the afternoon, not obviously together but always aware of where the other was. Connor played softball with the company team, and Amber found herself unable to look away, watching him laugh and joke with his employees, treating everyone with the same respect and warmth. Sophie made friends with other children, and Amber was surprised to find herself relaxing, actually enjoying the afternoon instead of just enduring it. Rachel found her at one point, offering a knowing smile but thankfully not commenting on Amber's constant awareness of Connor. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Connor approached Amber where she sat watching Sophie play. They're going to start the campfire soon, Connor said. Sophie might like making s'mores. She's never had s'mores, Amber admitted. I never had the chance to take her camping or do those kind of activities. Then this will be her first time, Connor said. A good first time with friends and fun. That's what matters. When the campfire was lit and the marshmallows brought out, Sophie bounced with excitement. Connor showed her how to toast a marshmallow, patiently explaining the technique and laughing when hers caught fire. It's supposed to be golden, not charcoal, Connor teased gently. But the burnt ones taste good too, Sophie insisted, blowing out the flame and smushing the blackened marshmallow between graham crackers and chocolate. Watching them together, Amber felt something in her chest expand. This was what she had wanted for Sophie. Not wealth or luxury but moments of simple joy. A father figure who actually cared. Safety and laughter and sticky marshmallow fingers. Connor caught her watching and smiled, a private smile meant just for her. And in that moment, Amber admitted to herself what she had been avoiding for weeks. She was falling for Connor Morrison. Not because he had money or because he had saved them. But because he was genuinely good. Because he made Sophie laugh. Because he saw Amber not as a charity case but as a woman worth knowing. Because when he looked at her, she felt beautiful and valued and seen in ways she had forgotten were possible. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Mom, Mr. Connor says we can come to another company event next month, Sophie said, her face sticky with chocolate. It's a movie night. Can we go? We'll see, Amber said automatically. I hope you do, Connor said, his eyes meeting Amber's over Sophie's head. Both of you. I'd like that very much. As the evening wound down and families began departing, Connor walked Amber and Sophie to their car. Sophie, exhausted from the day's activities, climbed into the back seat and was asleep before they even started the engine. Thank you for today, Amber said, lingering by the driver's door. Sophie had a wonderful time. What about you? Connor asked. Did you have a good time? I did, Amber admitted. More than I expected. They stood in the parking lot, other cars leaving around them, the sounds of the picnic fading. The moment stretched, charged with unspoken feelings. Amber, Connor started, then stopped, seeming to wrestle with something. I need to tell you something, but I don't want to make you uncomfortable or jeopardize your job. Amber's heart pounded. Okay. I care about you, Connor said simply. Not as an employee. Not as a good deed. As a woman I've come to admire and respect and want to know better. I know the timing might not be ideal and I know there are complications with me being your boss. But I can't keep pretending these feelings don't exist. Amber's breath caught. Connor, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now, Connor said quickly. I'm not asking for a response or putting pressure on you. I just needed you to know how I feel. And I want you to know that regardless of your feelings, your job is secure. Your position at Morrison Tech has nothing to do with this. You've earned your place there. I care about you too, Amber heard herself say. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. I've been trying not to because it feels complicated and scary. Because Sophie is already attached to you, and if things didn't work out, it would hurt her. It would hurt me. I understand, Connor said. And I won't push. But Amber, I don't have any intention of hurting either of you. I'm not Sophie's father. I won't disappear when things get difficult. That's not who I am. Amber wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. Can we take this slowly? Amber asked. I need time to think. To figure out if this is really what I want and not just gratitude or proximity or some rescue fantasy. Of course, Connor agreed. As slow as you need. I'm not going anywhere. Amber smiled despite her nervousness. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for being honest, Connor said. That takes courage. They stood for another moment, neither wanting to break the connection. Finally, Amber forced herself to get in the car. Good night, Connor, she said through the open window. Good night, Amber. Drive safe. As she drove home, Amber glanced in the rearview mirror at Sophie sleeping peacefully in the back seat. Her daughter looked content, safe, happy. Everything Amber had ever wanted for her. And maybe, just maybe, Amber was allowed to want something for herself too. Maybe she was allowed to want Connor Morrison and everything he offered. Not his money or his status, but his kindness, his laughter, his genuine care for both of them. Maybe she was allowed to hope for a love story, not just a survival story. The thought both terrified and thrilled her. But as she pulled into her apartment parking lot, Amber realized she was smiling. For the first time in a very long time, the future felt full of possibility instead of fear. And that was worth being brave for. 2 weeks after the company picnic, Connor invited Amber to lunch off-site. Not a working lunch in the office but an actual restaurant, just the two of them. Amber spent 30 minutes choosing her outfit, settling on a blue blouse and tailored pants, professional enough that if anyone saw them, it could pass as a business meeting, but nice enough to be appropriate for something more personal. The restaurant Connor chose was quiet and elegant without being pretentious, tucked away in a neighborhood far from the business district. They sat by a window overlooking a small garden, the midday sun filtering through leaves. I wanted privacy, Connor explained as they settled into their seats. Somewhere we could talk without everyone in the office speculating. Rachel already speculates plenty, Amber said with a small smile. Rachel speculates about everything, Connor laughed. It's part of her charm. They ordered, and for a few minutes, conversation stayed light, discussing work projects and Sophie's latest school achievements. But as their food arrived, Connor's expression grew more serious. You've told me about Sophie's father, Connor said carefully. About how he left. But you haven't told me much about the before. What made you choose him? What was your life like before Sophie? Amber set down her fork, surprised by the question. No one ever asked about that time. Why do you want to know? Because I want to know you, Connor said simply. All of you. Not just the strong single mother who handles everything. I want to understand the woman you were before life got hard. Amber took a sip of water, gathering her thoughts. I was different. Younger, obviously, but also more naive. I thought love meant grand gestures and passion. I met Tyler at a college party. He was charismatic, charming, always knew what to say. I fell hard and fast. Tyler? Connor repeated, storing the name away. Tyler Grant, Amber confirmed. He was a business major, talked about becoming an entrepreneur, changing the world. I believed every word. When I got pregnant, I thought he'd be excited. We'd been together 2 years. I thought we were building a future. But he wasn't excited, Connor said quietly. He was horrified, Amber said, the old pain still sharp. Told me I had to choose between him and the baby. Said a child would ruin his plans, trap him in a life he didn't want. I chose Sophie. He left that same night. Emptied our joint account and disappeared. I haven't heard from him since. Connor's jaw tightened. He's a coward and a fool. He was young and scared, Amber said, though the defense felt hollow. We both were. But I chose to be brave. He chose to run. You were both young, Connor agreed. But courage isn't about age. It's about character. And he showed his character clearly. He paused. What happened next? With your parents? They died in a house fire 6 months before Sophie was born, Amber said, her voice dropping. Faulty wiring. They were asleep. The fire department said they never woke up, that the smoke got them first. I was living with them at the time, but I was at work that night, pulling a late shift at a restaurant. Amber, I'm so sorry, Connor said, reaching across the table to take her hand. I blamed myself for a long time, Amber admitted. Thought if I had been home I could have woken them up. Saved them. But my therapist helped me understand that I would have just died too. That survivor's guilt is natural but not logical. You saw a therapist? Connor asked. Free clinic sessions through a community center, Amber explained. I couldn't afford to fall apart. I had Sophie coming and no support system. I had to process my grief and keep functioning. Connor squeezed her hand. That's incredibly strong. It was incredibly hard, Amber corrected. I cried myself to sleep most nights. But during the day I worked. I prepared. I did what I had to do to survive. She met his eyes. That's when I learned that strength isn't about not being scared or sad. It's about moving forward despite the fear and sadness. They sat in silence for a moment, Connor still holding her hand across the table. Then Amber gently pulled back, needing the emotional distance to continue. What about you? Amber asked. You mentioned losing your parents, but you didn't really tell me the whole story. Connor leaned back in his chair, his expression distant. I was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in computer science and business. My parents had helped me start Morrison Tech in our garage. It was tiny, just me and two friends developing software. My parents believed in me when no one else did. They sound wonderful, Amber said. They were, Connor agreed. My dad was a high school math teacher. My mom worked at a library. They didn't have much money, but they gave me everything they could. They took out a second mortgage to help fund the startup. They spent weekends helping us with marketing, with business planning, with everything. That's beautiful, Amber said. It was, Connor said quietly. Until the car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. They died instantly. I got the call while I was at a meeting with potential investors. I remember thinking it was a mistake. That the hospital had the wrong person. But it wasn't a mistake. I'm so sorry, Amber whispered. I almost quit everything after that, Connor admitted. The company, the dream, all of it. It felt meaningless without them there to see it succeed. I was drowning in grief and debt from their medical bills and funeral costs. That's when Marcus, my mentor, found me. The man you mentioned before? Amber asked. Connor nodded. Marcus Washington. He was a venture capitalist who had been watching our company. He tracked me down at my parents' funeral and told me he wanted to help. I thought he was a vulture trying to take advantage of my vulnerability. But he wasn't. He gave me an interest-free loan, business advice, and most importantly, a reason to keep going. What did he tell you? Amber asked. He said that the best way to honor my parents was to succeed. To build the company they had believed in. To prove their faith wasn't misplaced. He said grief is love with nowhere to go, and I could channel that love into creating something meaningful. Connor's eyes grew moist. He was right. Every success Morrison Tech achieved was for them. Every milestone was proof that their sacrifice mattered. They would be so proud, Amber said with certainty. I hope so, Connor said. Marcus died 5 years later from cancer. I never got to repay him financially. He refused every attempt I made to return the loan with interest. He said the repayment was to pay it forward when I had the means. And that's what you're doing, Amber realized. With me and Sophie. With many people, Connor corrected. Morrison Tech has several programs for employees facing hardship. College tuition assistance. Emergency financial support. Mental health resources. All inspired by what Marcus did for me. He met her eyes. But you and Sophie are different. You're not just a program or a policy. You're personal. Amber's heart raced. Personal how? I care about you both. Genuinely care. Not as a good deed or obligation. When I see Sophie's drawings on your desk, I smile. When you laugh at something I say, it makes my whole day better. When I imagine my future, you're both in it. Connor paused. I know it's early. I know we're still figuring things out. But I wanted you to know that this is real for me. You're real for me. Tears pricked Amber's eyes. I'm scared, Connor. What if this doesn't work? What if you realize I'm not what you thought? What if Sophie gets hurt? Then we face it together, Connor said firmly. But Amber, you have to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Not everyone leaves. Not everyone disappoints. Some people stay. Some people keep their promises. Tyler promised too, Amber said, voicing her deepest fear. I'm not Tyler, Connor said, his voice intense but gentle. I'm not some kid running from responsibility. I'm a man who knows what he wants. And what I want is a chance. A real chance to see where this goes. To see if what I feel for you and what you feel for me can become something lasting. Amber looked at him across the table, this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to prayers she hadn't dared to speak. He wasn't perfect. He had his own scars, his own losses. But he was offering her something precious. Oh, partnership. Well, okay, Amber whispered. A real chance. Let's see where this goes. Connor's smile was brilliant. Yeah, Amber confirmed, her own smile breaking through her tears. They finished lunch with lighter hearts, the heavy conversation giving way to easier topics. But the foundation had been laid. They knew each other's wounds now. They understood the losses that had shaped them both. And in that understanding, something solid began to form. Not just attraction or gratitude, but genuine connection. The kind built on truth, vulnerability, and mutual respect. As they left the restaurant, Connor took Amber's hand naturally and she didn't pull away. They walked to her car together, neither wanting the lunch to end. When can I see you again? Connor asked. Outside of work, I mean. A proper date. Soon, Amber promised. Let me arrange childcare for Sophie. Maybe this weekend? This weekend sounds perfect, Connor agreed. I'll plan something special. He kissed her cheek gently before stepping back, giving her space but making his intentions clear. Amber drove back to work with her fingers pressed against the spot where his lips had touched, her heart full of possibility. That evening, as she tucked Sophie into bed, her daughter looked up at her with knowing eyes. You like Mr. Connor? Sophie stated. Really like him. Amber smiled. Is that okay with you? I like him too, Sophie said. He's nice to us. He makes you happy. That makes me happy. I love you, baby, Amber said, kissing her daughter's forehead. Love you too, Mom, Sophie replied, already yawning. And I think you should marry Mr. Connor someday. Then we'd be a real family. Amber laughed softly. Let's not rush things, okay? We're taking it slow. But as she left Sophie's room and prepared for bed herself, Amber found herself thinking about Sophie's words. A real family. They were already a real family, just the two of them. But maybe, possibly, there was room for one more. Maybe Connor Morrison was meant to be part of their story all along. The thought didn't scare her as much as it once had. Instead, it felt like hope. And hope, Amber was learning, was a beautiful thing. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, bright but not too warm, ideal for the date Connor had planned. Amber had arranged for Sophie to spend the day with Rachel's family, who had kids Sophie's age and had become fast friends over the past month. Sophie had been thrilled at the playdate, giving Amber a knowing smile and a whispered, "Have fun with Mr. Connor," before running off to join the other children. Connor picked Amber up at noon, looking casually handsome in jeans and a blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He held a small bouquet of sunflowers, which he presented with a slightly nervous smile. I remember you mentioned once that sunflowers were your favorite, Connor said. I hope I remembered correctly. You did, Amber said, accepting the flowers with genuine delight. She wore a maroon sundress and sandals, her natural hair styled in loose curls that framed her face. From Connor's expression, she had chosen well. You look beautiful, Connor said sincerely. Thank you, Amber replied, feeling her cheeks warm. So, where are you taking me? It's a surprise, Connor said, opening the passenger door of his car for her. But I promise you'll enjoy it. The drive took them out of the city into more suburban areas, eventually arriving at a small vineyard and winery that Amber had never heard of. The grounds were beautiful, with rows of grapevines stretching across rolling hills and a charming tasting room overlooking the landscape. I didn't know you could even have vineyards this close to the city, Amber said as they parked. It's a hidden gem, Connor explained. Family-owned, been here for 3 generations. They focus on small batches and local distribution. A friend told me about it years ago, and I've been coming ever since. Inside, they were greeted by the owner, an older woman named Patricia who clearly knew Connor well and gave Amber an approving once-over before leading them to a private table on the outdoor terrace. Patricia's the owner and head vintner, Connor explained once they were seated. She's brilliant at what she does and has no patience for pretension, which is refreshing. I like her already, Amber said. Patricia brought them a tasting flight, explaining each wine's profile and characteristics with obvious passion. Amber, who had never done anything like this before, found herself relaxing and enjoying the experience. Connor was attentive without being overbearing, making her laugh with stories about various business dinners gone wrong and asking thoughtful questions about her own interests and dreams. If you could do anything, Connor asked as they finished their tasting. Without worrying about money or practicality, what would you do? Amber thought carefully. I'd finish my degree. Then I'd maybe start a nonprofit helping single mothers in crisis. Something that provides resources, support, job training, the kind of help I needed but couldn't find. That's a beautiful goal, Connor said. And entirely achievable. With your help, maybe, Amber said. But I want to do it on my own merits. Build it myself from the ground up. I respect that, Connor said. Though if you ever want advice or connections, I'm happy to help without taking over. It would be your organization, your vision. I'd just be support. They moved from the tasting room to lunch in the Vineyard's small restaurant, continuing their conversation over fresh salads and artisan bread. The topics ranged from serious to silly, from their childhoods to their dreams for the future. Amber found herself sharing things she hadn't told anyone, feeling safe enough with Connor to be completely honest. Can I ask you something potentially awkward? Amber said as they finished their meal. Of course, Connor said. How many serious relationships have you had? Amber asked. I mean, you're successful, attractive, obviously kind. I'm surprised you're still single. Connor smiled ruefully. I've had a few relationships over the years. Nothing that lasted. Most women I met were either intimidated by my work schedule or primarily interested in my money. It became exhausting trying to figure out who was genuine and who was just playing a role. That sounds lonely, Amber observed. It was, Connor admitted. I'd basically resigned myself to staying single, focusing on work. Then Sophie grabbed my arm in a mall and asked me to help her mother who was crying in a bathroom, and suddenly everything changed. We did crash into your life rather dramatically, Amber said with a laugh. Best crash I've ever experienced, Connor said, reaching across the table to take her hand. His touch sent warmth through Amber's body. She looked at their joined hands, marveling at how natural it felt. All right. After lunch, Connor drove them to their next destination, pulling up to a beautiful botanical garden that Amber had always wanted to visit but never had the time or money for. How did you know I've always wanted to come here? Amber asked in wonder. Sophie mentioned it once when she visited my office, Connor admitted. She said you have a bunch of books about plants and flowers but never get to see the real things. Amber felt tears prick her eyes. You pay attention to everything, don't you? Only to things that matter, Connor said softly. They spent the next 2 hours wandering through the gardens, admiring exotic flowers and towering trees. The space was quiet and peaceful with few other visitors. At one point, they found a secluded bench near a pond filled with water lilies, and they sat together, Amber's head resting on Connor's shoulder as they watched dragonflies dart across the water. This is perfect, Amber murmured. Thank you for this day. It's not over yet, Connor said. He was right. As evening approached, they left the gardens and drove to one more location, a small restaurant with outdoor seating that overlooked the water. The food was excellent, but Amber barely noticed what she was eating, too focused on Connor's face in the soft lighting, on the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. I have a confession, Connor said as they lingered over dessert. I've been thinking about kissing you all day. Amber's breath caught. Oh. But I didn't want to presume, Connor continued, or move too fast. I want to respect your boundaries and your need to take things slow. Connor, Amber said, meeting his eyes directly. I've been thinking about it too. And I think slow is overrated. Connor's smile was beautiful. Yeah, Amber confirmed. He leaned across the table, cupping her face gently in his hand. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, giving Amber room to pull back if she wanted. But she didn't want to pull back. She leaned into the kiss, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing to match her own. When they finally separated, both were smiling. That was nice, Amber said, understating wildly. Nice. Connor teased. That's all I get? Nice. Amazing, Amber amended. Perfect. Everything I hoped it would be. Good, Connor said, stealing another quick kiss. Because I've been wanting to do that for weeks. They left the restaurant walking hand in hand, completely comfortable with each other now that the barrier between friendship and romance had been crossed. Connor drove Amber home, parking in front of her apartment building but not moving to get out. I should let you go, Connor said reluctantly. Sophie will be back soon. Probably, Amber agreed, making no move to leave. Thank you for today. For all of it. It was perfect. We should do this again, Connor said. Soon and often. I'd like that, Amber said. She hesitated, then added, Sophie's been talking about you a lot. She really likes you. And I think she's hoping you'll become a permanent part of our lives. What about you? Connor asked. What are you hoping? Amber took a breath, deciding to be completely honest. I'm hoping the same thing. I'm scared because Hope has disappointed me before. But I'm also excited because you feel different. This feels different. Like maybe it's the real thing. Connor squeezed her hand. It is real, Amber. What I feel for you and Sophie, it's real. I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to go. Then don't go, Amber whispered. Stay. Be part of our lives. Let's see where this leads. I'd like nothing more, Connor said. He kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. It was a kiss full of promise and possibility and the beginning of something beautiful. When Amber finally went inside, she found a text from Rachel. How was the date? Amber replied with a simple heart emoji, unable to put the perfect day into words. As she prepared for Sophie's return, Amber found herself humming, something she hadn't done in years. She felt light, happy, hopeful in ways she had forgotten were possible. Connor Morrison had entered her life in the most unexpected way, and now she couldn't imagine him not being part of it. Sophie arrived home full of stories about her playdate, but she stopped mid-sentence when she saw Amber's face. You look really happy, Mom, Sophie observed. I am, baby, Amber said, pulling her daughter into a hug. I'm very happy. Good, Sophie said. You deserve to be happy. Mr. Connor makes you happy, doesn't he? He does, Amber confirmed. Then I'm glad, Sophie said simply. Can we invite him over for dinner sometime? I want to show him my new art project. I think that's a wonderful idea, Amber said. I'll ask him. That night, as Amber prepared for bed, her phone buzzed with a message from Connor. Thank you for taking a chance on me today. I can't wait to see you again. Sleep well, beautiful Amber. Amber smiled, typing back. Thank you for the perfect day. See you Monday at work. And Connor? I'm glad I took the chance. She fell asleep with a smile on her face, her dreams filled with sunflowers and kisses and the promise of more perfect days to come. For the first time since she could remember, Amber wasn't just surviving. She was living. Really, truly living. And it felt wonderful. Monday morning brought Amber back to Morrison Tech with a different feeling than usual. She walked into the building still glowing from Saturday's date, only to be greeted by Rachel's knowing grin. So, I'm guessing the date went well? Rachel asked, falling into step beside Amber as they headed to the elevators. It was perfect, Amber admitted, unable to hide her smile. I'm happy for you both, Rachel said sincerely. Then her expression grew more serious. But I should warn you. Some people have noticed that you and Connor have been spending more time together. And not everyone is thrilled about it. Amber's smile faded. What do you mean? Just be prepared for some gossip, Rachel said gently. A few people are saying Connor is showing you favoritism. That you got your position because of your connection to him rather than your qualifications. But that's not true, Amber protested. I've worked hard. I've earned my place here. I know that, and most people know that, Rachel assured her. Your work speaks for itself. But there are always people who want to create drama. Just ignore it and keep doing your job well. That's the best response. Despite Rachel's reassurance, Amber felt anxiety creeping in as she settled into her office. She had been so focused on her growing relationship with Connor that she hadn't considered how it might look to others. She didn't want anyone thinking she was using him or that she hadn't earned her position through merit. The day progressed normally until Amber overheard two employees talking by the break room. I heard she was literally crying in a mall bathroom when he found her, one said. Pretty convenient, right? Meet the CEO, get a job, and who knows what else. I'm just saying, some of us have been working here for years and never got personal attention from Connor Morrison, the other replied. But she's here a few weeks and suddenly they're all cozy? Amber stood frozen around the corner, her cheeks burning with shame and anger. She wanted to confront them, to defend herself, but she knew that would only make things worse. Instead, she quietly returned to her office and closed the door. She tried to focus on work, but the whispered comments kept echoing in her mind. Was that what people thought? That she was using Connor? That she didn't deserve to be here? A knock on her door startled her. Connor entered, his expression immediately concerned when he saw her face. What's wrong? He asked, closing the door behind him. People are talking, Amber said quietly. About us. Saying I got my job because of you. That you're showing me favoritism. Connor's jaw tightened. Who said that? It doesn't matter, Amber said. What matters is that they're not entirely wrong. You did give me this job. You did help me. And now we're dating and it looks bad. You earned this job, Connor said firmly. I've seen your work. You're excellent at what you do. The fact that we developed feelings for each other afterward doesn't change that. But it creates a perception problem, Amber said. I don't want people thinking I'm using you. And I don't want to cause problems for you or the company. Connor sat on the edge of her desk, taking her hands in his. Amber, I don't care what people think. What matters is the truth. You're qualified, hardworking, and valuable to this company. Our relationship is separate from your professional abilities. But is it separate? Amber asked. You're my boss. I report to you indirectly. There's an inherent conflict of interest. Connor was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. You're right. There is. And I should have thought about that more carefully before we started dating. He paused. Let me fix this. Properly. How? Amber asked. I'll have you transferred to a different department, Connor said. Equal position, same salary, but reporting to someone else so there's no appearance of impropriety. We'll make it clear that this is about maintaining professional boundaries, not about your performance. You do that? Amber asked, surprised. Without hesitation, Connor said. Your reputation and career are more important than any inconvenience this might cause. I won't let gossip damage what you've built here. Amber felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me for doing the right thing, Connor said gently. I should have thought of this from the beginning. I'm sorry you had to deal with whispers and speculation. Later that day, Connor called a brief meeting with the executive team and HR, explaining that Amber would be transferring to the marketing department as their new administrative coordinator, reporting directly to the marketing director. The move was effective immediately, presented as a strategic decision to better distribute workload and provide career development opportunities. Some employees might still gossip, but Connor had removed the direct conflict of interest. Amber couldn't be accused of receiving special treatment from someone she reported to because she no longer reported to him. That evening, Connor came to Amber's apartment for the first time, invited for the dinner Sophie had requested. Amber had been nervous about having him in her modest home, but Connor's genuine appreciation for the simple meal she prepared and his easy interaction with Sophie put her at ease. Mom made spaghetti, Sophie announced proudly. It's my favorite. It's delicious, Connor said, and he meant it. Thank you for having me over. After dinner, Sophie showed Connor her art projects, explaining each drawing in detail. Connor listened attentively, asking questions and praising her creativity. Watching them together, Amber felt her anxiety from earlier begin to fade. This was what mattered. Not what office gossip said, but the genuine connection between the three of them. Later, after Sophie went to bed, Connor and Amber sat on the couch, her head on his shoulder. I'm sorry about today, Connor said. About the gossip. I should have protected you better from that. You did protect me, Amber said. By transferring me. By making clear that our personal relationship doesn't affect my professional status. That was the right thing to do. I just want you to be happy and respected, Connor said. Both at work and in life. I am, Amber assured him. Because I have you. Because I have Sophie. Because we're building something real that doesn't depend on what other people think. Connor kissed the top of her head. I love how strong you are. How you face challenges head-on instead of running from them. I learned from experience, Amber said with a small smile. Running doesn't solve problems. It just delays them. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both thinking about the day's events and what they meant for their relationship. Can I ask you something? Amber said eventually. Anything, Connor replied. Are you prepared for this to be complicated sometimes? For people to judge us, to make assumptions, to create drama? Yes, Connor said without hesitation. Because what we have is worth fighting for. A little gossip or some judgmental coworkers don't change how I feel about you. They don't diminish what we're building together. I feel the same way, Amber said. But I wanted to make sure we're on the same page. That you're not going to wake up one day and decide this is too much trouble. Amber, Connor said, turning to face her directly. I've faced hostile takeover attempts, betrayals from business partners, and the death of people I loved. A few whispers in an office break room are nothing compared to those challenges. And you're worth infinitely more than the comfort of avoiding gossip. Amber kissed him, pouring all her gratitude and love into the gesture. When they separated, both were smiling. Thank you for understanding, Amber said. Thank you for giving me a chance despite the complications, Connor replied. Not everyone would. Well, I'm not everyone, Amber said with a grin. No, you're definitely not, Connor agreed. You're extraordinary. And I'm incredibly lucky to have found you. As Connor left that night, promising to text when he got home, Amber reflected on the day's ups and downs. The gossip had stung, but Connor's immediate action to address the conflict of interest showed his character. He wasn't just making promises about being supportive. He was actually following through, taking concrete steps to protect her reputation and career. That meant everything. Over the next few weeks, the gossip died down as Amber excelled in her new role in marketing. Her skills and work ethic spoke louder than any whispers, and most employees came to respect her for her abilities rather than speculating about her relationship with Connor. Connor and Amber continued dating, now with clearer professional boundaries that made both of them more comfortable. They had dinner together twice a week, alternating between restaurants and staying in. Sophie became increasingly attached to Connor, calling him Uncle Connor, and including him in her plans and stories. The complications hadn't disappeared entirely. There would always be some people who judged or gossiped. But Amber had learned that she couldn't control what others thought. She could only control her own actions and reactions. And as long as she knew the truth about her relationship with Connor, as long as she continued earning her place at Morrison Tech through hard work, the gossip couldn't truly hurt her. She had weathered the storm and come out stronger on the other side. And that was worth celebrating. 3 months after their first official date, Connor planned something special. He told Amber only to keep the day open and to bring Sophie, refusing to give any other details despite Amber's playful attempts to coax information from him. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. Connor picked them up early, surprising Sophie with tickets to an amusement park 2 hours away. Really? Sophie squealed, bouncing in her seat. We're going to Thunderworld? We are, Connor confirmed, smiling at her excitement. I heard they have a new roller coaster that's supposed to be amazing. Amber looked at him gratefully. She had never been able to afford to take Sophie to an amusement park, and Connor knew how much Sophie had wanted to go. This was another gift, not just for Sophie but for Amber too, the chance to see her daughter experience pure joy. The park was crowded but fun, with Connor treating them to every ride Sophie wanted to try. He held Amber's hand on the scarier rides, making her laugh when he dramatically screamed on the roller coasters. They ate overpriced park food without complaint, took silly photos with costumed characters, and collected stuffed animals from carnival games. By afternoon, Sophie was exhausted but blissfully happy, walking between Amber and Connor holding both their hands. Thank you, Uncle Connor, Sophie said for the 10th time. This is the best day ever. You're very welcome, Connor replied. I'm having a great time too. They decided to take a break from rides, finding a quiet spot near a fountain to rest. Sophie immediately curled up against Amber's side, her eyes drooping despite her attempts to stay awake. I think someone wore herself out, Connor observed with a smile. She'll probably sleep the whole drive home, Amber said, stroking Sophie's hair. Connor checked his phone then stood. Actually, we have one more stop before we head home. Something special. More special than this? Amber asked. Different special, Connor clarified. Trust me? Always, Amber said. They woke Sophie gently and made their way out of the park. Connor drove for about 30 minutes to a quieter, more upscale area, eventually pulling up to an elegant restaurant with a garden patio. It was still afternoon and the restaurant was quiet, clearly between lunch and dinner service. Connor, this place looks expensive, Amber said uncertainly. And we're all in amusement park clothes. I called ahead, Connor assured her. They're expecting us. And you both look perfect. A hostess greeted them warmly and led them through the main dining room to a private section of the garden patio. The space had been set up beautifully, with string lights already glowing in the late afternoon sun, a single table set with elegant simplicity and flowers everywhere. Wow, Sophie breathed, her exhaustion forgotten in the face of such beauty. I wanted to talk to you both, Connor said once they were seated, his tone suddenly serious. I've been thinking a lot about us. About what we mean to each other and where this is going. Amber's heart began to race. This felt significant. Connor reached across the table, taking Amber's hand. Amber, these past few months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've brought joy, laughter, and meaning to days that used to feel empty. You've shown me what it means to truly care for someone, to want their happiness as much as your own. Tears began forming in Amber's eyes. Connor turned to Sophie. And Sophie, you're an amazing kid. You're smart, kind, brave, and hilarious. I love spending time with you. I love being part of your life. And I hope you love having me around. I do, Sophie said seriously. You're my favorite grown-up except for Mom. Connor laughed, his own eyes misting. That's the best compliment I've ever received. He looked back at Amber. I know we've only been together a few months. I know some people would say this is too soon. But I also know how I feel. And I know what I want. Connor, Amber whispered, her voice shaking. I'm not proposing marriage, Connor clarified, reading her panicked expression. Not yet anyway. That's a conversation for later when you're ready. But I am proposing something else. A commitment. A promise. He pulled a small box from his pocket, but instead of a ring, it contained 2 delicate necklaces. One was a silver chain with a pendant shaped like a butterfly, clearly meant for Sophie. The other was gold with a small diamond pendant, elegant and simple. I want to give you both these, Connor said, as a symbol of my commitment to you. To both of you. I want to be part of your family. I want to help raise Sophie, to support you, Amber, to be there for the good days and the hard days. I want us to build a life together, to be a team. Really? Sophie asked, her eyes wide. Really? Connor confirmed. If your mom says yes. Sophie, I need your permission too. Do you want me to be part of your family? Officially? Sophie looked at Amber, who nodded through her tears. Then Sophie turned to Connor with the biggest smile. Yes. Yes, I want you to be my family. Connor carefully fastened the butterfly necklace around Sophie's neck. This is a promise from me to you that I'll always be here for you. That I'll always care about you and do my best to make you happy and safe. He turned to Amber, holding up the gold necklace. And Amber, this is my promise to you. I love you. I'm in love with you. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you can trust me, that you can count on me, that I'm not going anywhere. I love you too, Amber sobbed, unable to hold back the tears any longer. So much. I've been scared to say it, scared to believe this could be real. But I do love you, Connor Morrison. I love you so much. Connor came around the table and knelt beside Amber's chair, fastening the necklace around her neck and then pulling her into a tight hug. We're going to be okay, Connor whispered. All 3 of us. Together. Sophie joined the hug, wrapping her small arms around both of them. They stayed like that for a long moment, a makeshift family holding each other and crying happy tears. When they finally separated, the restaurant staff brought out a special dinner, clearly planned in advance. They ate and talked and laughed, discussing what this new commitment meant practically. Connor wanted them to spend more time together, maybe work toward living together eventually when everyone was ready. He wanted to be involved in Sophie's school activities, to help with homework, to be a real presence in their daily lives. What would I call you? Sophie asked at one point. Uncle Connor doesn't sound right anymore if you're going to be like a dad. What do you want to call me? Connor asked gently. I don't want to replace your biological father or pretend he doesn't exist. But I want to be whatever you need me to be. Sophie thought carefully. Can I call you Connor for now? And maybe later, if it feels right, I can call you Dad. That sounds perfect, Connor said, his voice thick with emotion. Whenever you're ready. No pressure. As they drove home that evening, Sophie fell asleep in the back seat clutching her new necklace. Amber sat in the passenger seat, her own pendant catching the streetlights, feeling overwhelmed by happiness. Thank you for today, Amber said quietly. For all of this. For choosing us. Thank you for letting me choose you, Connor replied, squeezing her hand. For giving me a chance. For building something real with me. I'm still scared sometimes, Amber admitted. That I'll wake up and this will all be gone. Then I'll keep proving every day that it's real, Connor promised. That I'm real. That what we have is solid and lasting. Amber believed him. For the first time in her life, she truly believed that happiness could last. That love could be steady and reliable instead of fleeting and painful. Connor Morrison had entered her life when she was at her lowest point. And now he was showing her heights she had never imagined reaching. As they pulled up to her apartment building, Sophie stirred in the back seat. Are we home? She mumbled. We're home, Amber confirmed. Connor carried Sophie inside, tucking her into bed while Amber changed into pajamas. When Amber came back out, Connor was waiting in the living room. I should go, Connor said reluctantly. Let you both rest. Or you could stay, Amber said softly. On the couch. Just to be here. With us. Connor smiled. I'd like that. They curled up together on the couch, Amber tucked against Connor's side, both of them content to simply be present with each other. Eventually, Amber dozed off, feeling safer and more loved than she ever had before. When she woke briefly in the middle of the night, Connor was still there, still holding her, still keeping his promise to stay. And Amber knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning of their forever. 6 months after Connor's commitment ceremony, on a perfect spring Saturday, Amber Johnson stood in front of a full-length mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The wedding dress was simple but elegant, white with delicate lace details, fitting her perfectly. Her hair was styled in soft curls, and her makeup highlighted her natural beauty without being overdone. Around her neck, she wore the gold pendant Connor had given her months ago. "Mom, you look like a princess," Sophie said from the doorway, wearing a maroon flower girl dress and clutching a small basket of petals. "Thank you, baby," Amber said, her eyes misting. "Are you ready for today?" "I'm ready," Sophie confirmed. "I get to walk down the aisle first and throw flowers and everything. And after today, Connor will officially be my dad." Connor had legally started adoption proceedings for Sophie 2 months ago, with Amber's enthusiastic blessing. Sophie's biological father had signed away his parental rights years ago, having no interest in being part of her life. The adoption would be finalized shortly after the wedding. Rachel entered the small dressing room, looking beautiful in her blue bridesmaid dress. "It's almost time," Rachel announced. "Are you nervous?" "Not at all," Amber said honestly. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The wedding was being held at the same vineyard where Connor and Amber had their first date, a detail that made the occasion even more special. Connor had wanted something small and intimate, just close friends and trusted colleagues, and Amber had agreed completely. This wasn't about showing off or making a big production. It was about celebrating their love and commitment in a meaningful way. As music began playing outside, Sophie grabbed her flower basket and took a deep breath. "Okay, I'm going," she announced. "See you out there, Mom." Amber watched through the window as Sophie walked down the aisle with perfect poise, scattering petals and beaming at the gathered guests. Then Rachel followed, and finally, it was Amber's turn. She stepped outside into the vineyard, the late afternoon sun casting everything in golden light. Rows of chairs lined a grass aisle leading to an arch covered in flowers. And at the end of that aisle stood Connor Morrison, looking more handsome than she had ever seen him in a navy suit, his eyes locked on her with such love and devotion that Amber felt her breath catch. This was real. This was actually happening. Amber walked down the aisle alone, having no father or family to escort her. But she didn't feel alone. Sophie was standing at the front with the biggest smile. Rachel was beaming with pride. And Connor was waiting, reaching out his hand as she approached. "You're beautiful," Connor whispered as she took his hand. "So are you," Amber replied, making him laugh. The ceremony was short and sweet, focused on the promises they were making to each other. When it came time for the vows they had written, Connor went first. "Amber, when Sophie grabbed my arm and asked me to help her mother, I had no idea that moment would change my entire life. You came into my world at what seemed like your lowest point, but you showed me what real strength looks like. You taught me that success isn't measured in money or business achievements, but in the people we love and the lives we touch. You've given me purpose, joy, and a family I never knew I was missing. I promise to stand by you always, to support your dreams, to love Sophie as my own daughter, and to be the partner you deserve. I promise that when things get hard, I won't run. I'll stay and face challenges with you. I promise to keep earning your trust every single day for the rest of our lives." Tears streamed down Amber's face as she began her own vows. "Connor, I came into your life carrying years of pain, fear, and exhaustion. I had given up on the idea that good things could happen, that people could be genuinely kind without expecting something in return. But you proved me wrong in the most beautiful way. You showed me that help isn't always about money. It's about seeing someone's worth and helping them see it too. You gave me back my hope, my confidence, and my belief that I deserve happiness. You've loved not just me but Sophie, making her feel valued and safe in ways I couldn't do alone. I promise to be your partner in all things, to build our life together as a team, to never forget where we came from and always reach back to help others. I promise to love you fiercely, to trust you completely, and to spend every day grateful for the moment Sophie was brave enough to ask for help and you were kind enough to give it." There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and Connor kissed Amber with such tenderness and joy that everyone erupted in applause. Sophie ran up to join them and they shared a family hug, the three of them officially united. The reception was held at the vineyard's event space with dinner, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. Patricia, the vineyard owner, gave a short speech about watching Connor come to her vineyard alone for years and how happy she was to see him with a beautiful family. Rachel shared funny stories about Amber's first days at Morrison Tech and how obvious it was that something special was developing between her and Connor. When it was time for their first dance, Connor and Amber swayed together to a soft song, neither of them skilled dancers but both perfectly content to simply hold each other. "Are you happy?" Connor asked softly. Happier than I ever imagined possible, Amber replied. You? Beyond measure, Connor said. I have everything I could ever want. You, Sophie, a future full of possibility. This is what life should be. After their dance, Connor invited Sophie to join them, and they danced as a family, Sophie standing on Connor's feet as he waltzed them both around the floor. As the evening wore on and the sun set, casting everything in soft twilight, Amber took a moment to step outside for some air. She stood on the patio overlooking the vineyard, reflecting on how far she had come. A year ago she had been crying in a bathroom, convinced she had failed. Now she was married to an incredible man, watching her daughter thrive, and looking forward to a future she had stopped believing was possible. Mommy? Sophie's voice came from behind her. Amber turned to find her daughter approaching with a slightly worried expression. What's wrong, baby? Nothing's wrong, Sophie said. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. I couldn't find you for a minute and I got scared. Amber knelt down, pulling Sophie into a hug. I'm more than okay. I'm perfect. I was just taking a moment to think about how lucky we are. We are really lucky, Sophie agreed. And Connor, Dad, is the best. You're calling him Dad now? Amber asked gently. Yes, Sophie said. It feels right. He's my dad now. The papers said so. You're right, Amber agreed. He's your dad. And he's going to be an amazing one. They stood together for a moment, then Sophie grabbed Amber's hand. Come on, Mom. They're about to cut the cake and I want to see if I can convince Dad to let me have 2 pieces. Amber laughed, letting Sophie pull her back inside. As they entered, Connor's eyes found Amber immediately, his expression softening with love and relief that she was back. They cut the cake together, fed each other small bites amid laughter and camera flashes. Sophie did manage to convince Connor to let her have 2 pieces, winning him over with her negotiation skills. As the reception wound down and guests began leaving, something unexpected happened. Sophie, who had been playing with some other children, suddenly was invisible. Amber felt a spike of panic, scanning the space frantically. Connor, where's Sophie? Amber asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Connor immediately went into action mode, asking guests if they had seen her. Rachel joined the search along with several others. Amber felt her old anxiety rising, memories of every bad thing that had ever happened flooding back. We'll find her, Connor said firmly, taking Amber's hand. She's probably just exploring or found somewhere quiet to rest. This is a safe place. They searched the event space, the bathrooms, the parking lot. 5 agonizing minutes passed before they heard laughter coming from the vineyard rows. Following the sound, they found Sophie with 3 other children, playing hide and seek among the grapevines. Sophie. Amber called, her voice a mix of relief and frustration. Sophie emerged from the vines, immediately realizing she was in trouble. I'm sorry, Mom. We were just playing. I forgot to tell you where I was going. Amber wanted to scold her but instead pulled her into a tight hug. Please don't scare me like that. Always tell me where you're going, okay? I promise, Sophie said. I'm sorry I worried you. Connor knelt down to Sophie's level. We're glad you're safe. But Sophie, part of being a family means we communicate. We tell each other where we are so nobody worries. I understand, Sophie said seriously. I won't do it again. Crisis averted, the last guests left, and the 3 of them found themselves alone in the vineyard as full night fell. They sat together at a table on the patio, Sophie between her parents, all of them exhausted but happy. Best day ever? Connor asked Sophie. Best day ever, Sophie confirmed. I got 2 pieces of cake, I'm wearing a fancy dress, and I have a real dad now. Best day ever for me too, Amber agreed. I married the love of my life, and we officially became a complete family. Connor kissed Amber's temple and ruffled Sophie's hair. For me, the best part is knowing this is just the beginning. We have a lifetime of best days ahead of us. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. Amber thought about the journey that had brought them here, from that desperate moment in a bathroom to this perfect evening. She thought about Sophie's bravery in asking for help, Connor's kindness in giving it, and her own courage in accepting both the help and the love that followed. Life hadn't become perfect. There would still be challenges, moments of doubt, days that were hard. But they would face those challenges together as a family. With love, support, and unwavering commitment to each other. Thank you, Amber said softly to both Sophie and Connor. Thank you for being my family. For showing me that happy endings are real. Not an ending, Connor corrected gently. A beginning. Our forever is just starting. And as they finally left the vineyard to begin their new life together, Amber believed him completely. This wasn't an ending to their story. It was the beautiful beginning of everything they were meant to be. Together as a family forever.